and then I guess we'll just go from there as the conversation goes on. Right?
Okay, sounds good.
Sorry.
You're fun.
So we read your thesis paper, and it was really interesting to read.
I'm sorry they made you read that.
Oh, no. We were forced to read. Well, and just want to start off by how can students who live far from the mountains help raise awareness for the environmental crimes?
I would say there's a really good outreach program. It's called Appalachian Voices. I don't know if your teacher mentioned that at all. Appalachian Voices is a nonprofit organizing in the area, but due to a lack of funding from North Carolina Mining Association, they had to cut funding to provide these kits. So funding, probably another factor as well.
Yeah. Wow.
Speaking of funding and non-coal mining, how does it affect Mitchell County economically? And can it also affect the people's health?
What was the last part?
Can it also affect the people's health?
Well, they don't have any, let me think of the word. They don't have a tax. Like, in Texas, they usually have a tax for anything that they extract out of the ground. So a community, if they have like large oil deposits for extracting that oil, the community will usually get something in return for selling those natural goods to a company. So a lot of communities that have mining, they'll have that kind of tax in place. But usually those communities will stray away from having taxes like that in place, which kind of give funding back to the community, because a lot of corporations will say, oh, well, we don't need your natural resources. We can go somewhere else where we'll be more friendly, more inclined to give us a free break and not tax us. So because North Carolina doesn't have, I think they have a tax, they have a tax on timber, but they don't have a tax on exporting or extracting any kind of minerals. And they do that because they want to be a business-friendly state, and that's also why they don't have unions here. So I would say that the only financial or economic benefit that mining gives back to Mitchell County is that it does hire and employ a fairly large group of people, but recently they've been letting off several, I think, probably out of 300 employees that Uniman has, I think they laid off half of those. And then I just heard recently there was an employee from Uniman who is being forced to take vacation because he said that there's nothing to do. So it's kind of troublesome in that they are laying off so many workers in the processing plants. So it could be due to the fact that they are looking for synthetic materials to replace actual quartz, or they're finding them in countries that are even more affordable and accommodating. So overall, I think in the future, there's not going to be really any economic benefit if they're losing jobs for locals.
Yeah.
So sooner or later, the economy is going to go down?
It could. I mean, depending on what happens with, it kind of goes both ways. Like, it depends on which side of the fence you're on with this mining, and that a lot of the employees or researchers at the local mining companies, they're going to say, our jobs aren't going anywhere. We are the only region in the world that has this high-quality quartz. They can't replace it with synthetic materials. So we're here to stay kind of mentality. But if you hear from pretty much anyone from outside of the world who's researching mining, they're going to say that they're finding quartz in other places. And more, I would say, I guess, like if they find some in Norway and Uniman is based out of Norway, then it's going to be cheaper for them to mine those materials at home. So, yeah, that is an issue. That's definitely a worrisome thing. What are we going to do when mining leaves? Because I would say the next big employers in the area are a local prison and local education system, so high school, middle school. But we've had two schools close in the past 2 years. So I know it's kind of depressing, but kind of the state of things at the moment.
What about the health concerns from this?
Yeah, health concerns. I was pretty disturbed to find out, if I'm remembering right, and this could have changed since I was doing my thesis, but North Carolina was ranked 89th, or was it 89th? Or Mitchell County was ranked 89th, I think, in the entire state for being the least healthy.
Wow.
Far down there. We have a lot of asthma, a lot of bronchitis issues, and there was no research to determine whether or not that was caused from breathing in some of the dust that's in the area. There is a lot of dust surrounding the mines. If they don't spray properly, they're supposed to dampen any extra dust that comes off from processing the quartz. So a lot of that can cover people's homes. It can cover all of their furniture. A lot of it gets dumped into the rivers nearby, so you've got this kind of green-gray kind of tint to the rivers around here. But yeah, so there's not been a study, and I don't know who should be prompted to do it, but there's not been a study to see if that correlates between the asthma and the bronchitis. But we do have a huge population rate with those two diseases. Let's see, what else do we have? We do have really high rates of cancer. And another issue that needs to be investigated is that when these mining companies are processing the quartz or other minerals, they separate the minerals, the quartz, from the other kind of extracted rock using hydrofluoric acid. And so we recently just put in a hydrofluoric acid processing plant. And I'm not a scientist. I was terrible at science in high school, but from what I've heard from other researchers is that if you get any kind of hydrofluoric acid on your body, it can burn your lungs, it can burn your skin. And so apparently there's this plant coming to the area that's going to be installed, and there's only going to be one person managing it. So it's not bringing any jobs, and it's also being left to one person to make sure that this hydrofluoric acid doesn't completely